Alright, hello everybody. We're gonna get into the tribe of Dan, and once again, oh wait, hold on. Give me 1 second. The following is for research purposes, and we're looking at how the tribe of Dan may have been the Spartans. Okay, so going back through this peer review paper, we were right here on number 4. So, um, So it's talking about how in Judges regarding the Danites and their close relationship to the Philistines. Uh, okay, so um, and it's helpful to understand what the Philistines were, a sea people. The Sea Peoples were a shifting coalition of groups with Aegean and Anatolian roots. And that comes from the historical roots of the Old Testament. Um, Although the Bible only refers to the Philistines, it talks about how they know of 8 other people who existed alongside and some who migrated with the Philistines to the land of Canaan. Um, Egyptian sources relate events and battles connected to the migrations of the Sea Peoples. Okay, one of the Sea Peoples mentioned in ancient texts bears a name parallel to Dan, allowing for grammatical endings. The Dananunan, the Danum in Phoenician, and Danoia in Greek. I'm assuming those are how those are pronounced. Okay. And then if you follow this right here on 16, it talks about this right here down here. It talks about the tribe of Dan, sons of Israel, or Greek mercenaries hired by Egypt. Alright, that's interesting. Okay. Okay, so it talks about, we got Egyptian documents on how the Philistines and the Tajerker were sea peoples who migrated to Israel. And recent archaeological excavations at El Awat, originally thought to have been related to early Israelite settlements, have recently shown potential evidence that the Shardana migrated to the land and made a home. The likelihood then that the Denon, who were recorded by Egyptian texts and reliefs as having been in the area at the same time as the other 3 groups, who would also be on the coast of Canaan, is much higher than previously assumed. Hmm. Okay. In fact, the only unoccupied by the Sea Peoples could have been occupied by the Denon, or the Danon, is the area which Joshua and Judges indicated that the tribe of Dan reside. Okay, so let's read here. Um, all right. And this right here is also interesting, where it talks about among the Sea Peoples was a group called Dan Una, associated by many scholars with the people called Danoia. by Homer. This group, like the Philistines, settled on the coast of Canaan, but in time joined the Israelites as the tribe of Dan. Alright? Continuing. Okay, one of the overlooked pieces of evidence for a connection between the Sea Peoples and the tribe of Dan is a battle against Sisera in Judges 4-5. Ignoring the reference to ships in 5.17, we might naturally wonder why the Danites chose not to battle against Sisera. One possibility has been proposed for this is the interpretation that Sisera was not a Canaanite, although a general serving of Canaanite kings, his name has been proposed to actually derive from the Sardinia Sea Peoples in Sardinia. Okay, so going down. So it's talking about how that the Danites wish to not hurt their relations with this group, so they chose basically not to fight. And there's similar instances with battling other sea peoples, because the Danites were reluctant to battle the Philistines during Samson's rulership. Okay, so, um, okay, so, reading some more. Okay, so... Okay, so here's another one where it talks about how Unveiled on the migration of the narrative, Dan and Judges 18 has revealed fascinating parallels between the Danite story and Aegean settlement patterns. He notes that the Sea Peoples used to travel in a similar manner as they migrated. Blah, blah, blah. And, okay, so there's another greater parallels between the Danite tale and another Greek migration narrative. Although he proposes that this is because the possibility of borrowing from the Book of Judges from other known Mediterranean stories, the parallels may actually be further evidence of the connection between the Danites and the Aegean culture. And here's another interesting thing about the Danite hero Samson, which actually revealed many similarities between his Israelite tribe and the Mycenaean Danaan. Okay, Samson has, to be quite frank, many parallels to the Greek myth of Hercules. When one examines his deeds, one finds an almost absolute parallel between the biblical story of Samson and legends of Danaan tribes. Okay. Although the Samson figure may have some sort of historicity behind him, she argues that the Danaan legends clearly underline the description of Samson and the account of his life. It is possible that the present form of the story of Samson is based on earlier legends of the Sea Peoples who became part of the Israelites. And the Danites may well have been Greek speakers. Okay, and according to memories appear to have remained in the Second Temple period, according to 1 Maccabees 12.20 through 23, the Jews believed and were telling the Greeks that the Spartans were the children of Abraham. Okay, this is a very good a portion of evidence, and this claim was repeated even later by Josephus. And according to Wellborn, the legend between the Jews and Spartans can be traced back to pre-Maccabean times. Okay, the ancient historian Herodotus claimed that the Spartans were descended from Hercules. If the connection between Samson and Hercules, the Danites and Danaan, was vaguely remembered, it is possible to explain why these later Jews could make these claims. So where are we at here? On time. Okay, we're gonna try and wrap this up if possible. So let's go through 5 because I want to move on to the next one. Okay, so I'm reading. This is archaeology. Okay, so there's pottery in Upper Galilee, from south in Samaria and Judah. However, at Tel Dan, there is a mixture of Upper Galilee forms of certain evidence that might relate to Dan being part of these sea peoples. And in the Bronze Age tombs, Tel Dan contained imported Mycenaean and Cypriotic wares, which one might expect if the inhabitants of the city at the time, still called Laish, were from the Mediterranean. Okay, and then, so foreign from Israel are some of the archaeological finds that Romer writes in a recent monograph that Dan probably did not become Israeli or an Israelite until the 8th century. So let's go down. Okay. This archaeological evidence right here finds indicate that the peoples living in Dan were a mixed bunch who brought their eating habits, grooming practices, weapons of choice, and their gods with them to the city. And it is believed that the Danites living at Dan were not originally Israelites, but members of the Danaan Sea people. Okay, so the Danites were Greek-speaking coastal trading colony, isolated by the destruction of their mother country, hence increasingly vulnerable to pressure from native neighbors and finally forced to move inland. McDermott concurs, arguing that a possible inference is that some of the Danaan, remembered as a seafaring people, settled on the coast along with the Philistines, but later were forced out in a conflict with them, and eventually joined with a newly emerging Israelites as the tribe of Dan. Okay. Okay, so conclusion. Okay, although appearing to be a small and finally forgotten group in the cumulative work of the Jewish and Christian scriptures, it is strangely depicted by the Torah as having been the second largest tribe out of the 12. And it seems that the Danites were once part of the many and numerous sea peoples. Okay. Amos 9.8 relates that the sea people, simply referred to as the Philistines, were led by their God in a special divinely orchestrated migration, no different than Israel's. Is it that surprising to imagine that this group might have actually considered them part of the larger people of Israel? Why Deuteronomy 2.23 says that God gave the sea peoples a designated allotted land. Can this be historical memory of the Danites' previous inheritance? Some of the sea peoples already practiced circumcision. Their identification as sharing and the promise of Exodus may not be hard to imagine. So, right here, talks about the relationship of the Canaanites, Philistines, and Israelites was more complex than the book of Judges would lead us to believe. There were many groups present during the upheavals at the beginning of the Iron Age, and the people who became the Israelites probably included a mix of all of them. We should not look for one single origin of the Israelites, but for multiple origins. And I would have to say that this is true because some of the research that I've found shows that some of the Israelites even had different 10 Commandments. And they also had different beliefs. And so what we're reading in the Bible was not necessarily, I would say maybe it was just one, like, tribe that believed like that certain Torah. There may have been like different other Torahs. I mean, if there were different 10 Commandments, then there had to be different versions of the first 5 books, I would imagine. So like I said, this was out in 2020, so research in this area still is new and remains ripe for discovery. For instance, other tribes of Israel are mysteriously linked with the sea. The tribe of Zebulun is promised to settle at the shore of the sea and to become a haven for ships. Issachar has similar ideas. Asher is also strangely described as residing on the seashore with ship ports. Might we discover that more of the people of Israel, beside Dan, had close connections to the sea peoples and other groups? And this is actually something we're about to explore, because I've come across information to where I think there's part of the tribe of Dan and that started Sparta, and there was part of the tribe of Judah that started Troy. And I think it's ironic that it seems that this part of Dan invaded that part of Troy, and that became basically the basis of this whole, like, the War of Troy and stuff like that. But also, not too far after the Troy incident, I would say that the Israelites made that exodus out of Egypt. So Canaan was actually being attacked from both land and sea. But we'll get into that. Okay, so that's it. And the next one, so in 2 weeks we'll get into more of this. I got like 2 more papers right now that's focused on this. Well, I wouldn't say just necessarily the tribe of Dan. The next ones are going to kind of break down the Israeli migrations. really strongly, and also provides some interpretation of the cities and stuff in the Bible and where they were and things of that nature. And also one talking about how the Antichrist will come from the tribe of Dan. Um, so we got some interesting things coming up. If you be patient with me, we will get there. But next week, I'm going to be doing my United America series, and it's going to be about the Federal Reserve and the fear-based system. And I think at the end of that, we'll wrap up the United America series, and then I'll be choosing something else to start filling in that research. This one though, the Bible Unveiled series, this has a lot to it because we haven't even gotten into Gnosticism yet. So alright, and I just want to remind everybody that I'm creating t-shirts that enhance positive messaging and humor. This is the first one I created that basically is like my pillars that I go by: creativity, love, forgiveness, unity. This is a large, and I'm selling it for $18. If you're interested, leave me a reply, and I'll give you my email, and we can communicate through email. I can also create any wording that you want. I haven't done pictures or downloaded PDFs yet, but give me a month or two and I'll have that all figured out if you're interested in that. But this shirt right here is a large. It goes for $18, plus $5 for shipping and handling. And also, the price changes with size, and color lettering besides black and white might be a little bit more expensive at the moment until I get the prices figured out. I'm doing it this way until a website goes up because I'm figuring out, I'm understanding how to make them and things of that nature. But if you're interested in the meantime, go ahead and hit me up. It's a good way to support me, and I'm looking to do better video quality and things of that nature. And support is always awesome, but don't break yourself doing it. And the t-shirts are unisex, so yeah. Alright. And the following has been a Jester production. I will see you all next week for most likely my final episode to the Uniting America. Alright, well, y'all have a good one, and peace out.